Today, I wish to present the topic of the iconography of the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank. Although this topic is very specific and perhaps not too well known, it possessed great significance in the history of banknotes in China. To understand the significance, we must briefly touch on the vast history of banknote issuance in China, which first began roughly 1,000 years ago in the 7th century AD. During this period, the Tang Dynasty issued the first form of banknote, being a promissory note which promised the redemption of a denominated amount of cash coins upon presentation to a trusted institution. These notes were invented to alleviate the merchant's burden of carrying copious amounts of cash coins, given that a single cash coin had little value on its own and thus had to be strung up in larger amounts to make usage even possible. To help visualize this, let us look at this Kaiyuan Tongbao cash coin from the Tang Dynasty. Unless specified on the reverse, these coins usually were denominated in 1 wen, a wen referring to a single cash coin. These had little value, as we can see in this picture. Many had to be strung together to make transactions viable. However, with the issuance of these banknotes, two issues arose. The first being counterfeiting, and the second being the temptation of excessive issuance. With counterfeiting, this was solved through the usage of seals. However, the problem of excessive issuance was a governmental one. This is especially seen in the Yuan dynasty, who, despite not having the necessary reserves to back their banknotes, continuously issued them in order to generate government revenue. It is important to note that the Yuan dynasty was not alone in this habit. The succeeding Ming dynasty in 1368 began issuing Baochao banknotes, but stopped in 1430 in order to stop inflation. Here we can see an example of this Baochao banknote from the Ming dynasty era. This particular banknote carries a denomination of 1 guan, which was equal to 1,000 cash coins. Though the issuance of paper money in China was a revolutionary one, the issues of counterfeiting and the temptation to excessively issue such paper money plagued the reputation of paper money in China. The result of successive dynasties not having sufficient reserves to back their liberally issued banknotes resulted in a general distrust in their usage, even as the new dynasties took power in China. This is especially seen during the early reign of the Qing dynasty, which only issued banknotes from 1651 to 1661 and 1850 to 1860. This hesitancy was a result of Qing rulers who recognized the history of excessive banknote issuance, which would have spiraled into rampant inflation. From 1651 to 1661, the Qing dynasty issued a series of banknotes called Chaoguan, or officially Hubu Guanpiao, which stood for Ministry of Revenue Government Notes. Here we can see an example of a Chaoguan banknote. It carries the denomination of 1 liang. This is a later example, as they were issued again in 1850 onwards, though it was short-lived. From 1850 to 1860, the Qing dynasty would issue Ta-Ching Baochao banknotes. These were issued excessively in order to fund the Qing armies against the Taiping Rebellion. Denominations of 250, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000 wen were issued. Here we can see an example of such a banknote. It carries a denomination of 500 wen, or 500 cash coins. It was issued during the 6th year of the Xianfeng era, or 1856. Depicted here is a guide produced by John E. Sandrock regarding how to read such banknotes. Please pause here to have a further look and click play when you wish to continue. Despite there being only 2 sporadic issues of paper money under the Qing dynasty, paper money would again be issued from 1897 right until its fall in 1912. The factors leading to this were mainly economic. The Qing dynasty was in realization that it needed to modernize monetarily. There was also the issue of more easily engaging in foreign trade, which required a reliable medium of exchange rather than simply using coinage. Banknotes issued during this era are of a stark contrast to previous Chinese banknote issues. Across all previous ruling dynasties, all Chinese banknotes issued were of a simple design. They were text-heavy and were printed vertically rather than horizontally. This shift in design is arguably a revolutionary one. This in turn brings us to the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank. This particular series was selected as it stands out in contrast to all previous banknote issues. These banknotes for the first time embodied a strong sense of Western design, especially American design in it. They also had a stronger design element when compared to previously issued Chinese banknotes. These banknotes were also the first to be independently printed in China using Western technology. Surprisingly, despite being dated 1910, printing only began on the 1st of March 1911, and many never saw any circulation. Of the denominations printed, which included the $1, $5, $10, and $100 notes, only the $10 note saw any circulation, evident by it being the only note that had serial numbers and seals printed on it. Not many of these banknotes saw circulation, so aside from the $10 note, it is hard to find images for these banknotes. To support this, we can look at this 1880 series United States $2 banknote. Keeping this banknote in mind, it is evident why the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank appear quite westernized. Now, without further delay, let us now look at the banknotes. To start with, we have the $1 note from this series. The obverse depicts a portrait of Zai Feng, Prince Chun, on the center left, which is supported by crashing waves. In the center, we can see a dragon reaching for the sun at the top, whilst at the bottom, we can see a background of junk ships with a sole steamship amongst the junk ships. The blank sides on the right and left are where the serial numbers would have been added. The reverse is a plain one and simply depicts the denomination and name of the issuer. In the center, there is a blank square and circle where the seals would have been added to the note. There are also two dragons biting into the area of the seals. At the bottom of this note simply reads Imperial Chinese Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Now, moving on to the second banknote is the $5 note from this series. The obverse, much like the previous one, features Zai Feng and a dragon. The background differs greatly as it depicts an armed horse patrol. The blank sides on the right and left are where the serial numbers would have been added. The reverse is a plain one and depicts the denomination and name of the issuer. There is a blank square and circle where the seals would have been added, and at the bottom of this note reads Imperial Chinese Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Moving on to the third banknote is the $10 note from this series. The obverse, much like the previous two notes, features Zai Feng and a dragon. The background depicts a section of the Great Wall of China with a few civilians viewing the Great Wall. Unlike the previous two notes, the right and left side feature serial numbers, as this was the only note issued from the series. The reverse is a plain one and depicts the denomination and name of the issuer. Given that this banknote was issued, seals have been applied in the square and circle outlines. The bottom of this note reads Imperial Chinese Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Lastly, with the fourth banknote from this series, is the $100 note. The obverse, much like the previous three notes, features Zai Feng and a dragon. The background depicts a scene consisting of farmers engaging in agricultural work on the fields. The blank sides on the right and left are where the serial numbers would have been added. The reverse is a plain one and depicts the denomination and name of the issuer. The blank square and circle on the left and right, respectively, would have been the area where the seals were added. At the bottom of this note reads Imperial Chinese Bureau of Engraving and Printing. If we look at the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank alongside previously issued paper money under the Qing dynasty, the dragon seems to appear very frequently. We can also see the recurring usage of the portrait of Zai Feng, Prince Chun, in the 1910 series of these banknotes. The reasons for this lie in the symbolism that is derived from the dragon and Zai Feng. Regarding the dragon, this legendary creature holds great cultural significance in China. It symbolized power excellence, goodness, perseverance, heroism, nobility, greatness, energy, optimism, intelligence, courage, good fortune, and ambition. Within the historical context of the Qing dynasty, the dragon also symbolized imperial authority. For instance, we can see this in the flag of the Qing dynasty. The dragon, being the dominant element on the flag, emphasized heavily on Qing imperial authority. Within the context of the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank, the inclusion of the dragon in this case perhaps emphasized on the economic prosperity and fortune of the great Qing dynasty. It also appears to be pointing and looking into the direction of the sun. Given the association of the dragon with optimism, it perhaps also symbolized the Qing dynasty's vision of a bright future. However, it could have simply been an aesthetic choice. Given that a banknote was not only a medium of exchange but also a store of value, it could have simply been a design decision to have a symbol of good fortune on it. Regarding Zai Feng, Prince of Chun, the addition of his portrait lied more in his success within the Qing government. Born on the 12th of February 1883, Zai Feng was a Manchu prince and regent of the Qing dynasty. His latter position started upon Pu Yi's accession to the throne in 1908. Zai Feng's rise to prominence began in 1901, where he was assigned to diplomatic duties in the West. His successes led to Dowager Empress Cixi to promote him to various positions. One of these positions Zai Feng was appointed to was that of the Minister of Finance. Given Zai Feng's prominence in the West, as well as his duties related to the Qing dynasty's finances, the inclusion of his portrait in the 1910 series banknotes of the Ta-Ching Government Bank is not a random one. Banknotes in China, up till this point, had a relatively unchanged design. This banknote series was an effective departure from traditional Chinese banknote design and, in a way, the Qing government's embrace of Western modernity. In this case, the inclusion of Zai Feng on these banknotes is one that considers his recognition of modernizing China. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed this series.